what's going on? Jeff Ratcliffe here. Spending a pick on a player in a questionable situation is often a risky proposition in your fantasy football drafts, and this year there are certainly some big name players in questionable situations. Of course, we have two holdout situations at the running back position, Melvin Gordon and Ezekiel Elliott. These guys are top 10 fantasy running backs without the holdout. Then, of course, we have some injury situations to monitor. You have A.J. Green going to miss some time into the regular season with his foot injury, and you have Andrew Luck with his lower leg injury, whatever is going on there, could possibly miss time in the regular season as well. And then, of course, there's Antonio Brown. He's got the frostbite on his feet, the helmet issue, a number of question marks surrounding him as well. But you know what? With any one of these guys, there reaches a point in your draft where the risk-reward, where the scales start to tip in your favor, the reward outweighs the risk. It's different for each one of these guys, though, so I want to dive into them and tell you exactly where I'm willing to take these guys in my fantasy football drafts. And we'll start with Ezekiel Elliott. Of these guys, he's the one who I have the least concern with. And in fact, if he wasn't holding out, he'd be my number one running back. In fact, you'll probably see some other videos where I'm saying that from earlier in the offseason. He was my number one guy throughout the offseason until this holdout news came in. And then, of course, we had to bump him down. Now, where am I willing to take him? And with Ezekiel Elliott, I am somewhat optimistic that he's going to get back onto the field by the time the season starts. So with Ezekiel Elliott, I'm actually willing to take him at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. The idea here is you're back in that tail end of the round. So if you're in a 12-teamer, you're at pick 12. All right, well, you can use that on a safer guy. Maybe use it on a safe wide receiver like a Michael Thomas, and then you swing for the fences with Ezekiel Elliott. You could potentially get 12 picks of value on him in the first round. That's almost unheard of. You know, if you get Elliott at the first pick in the second round, you could have the number one overall fantasy running back at that spot. That's crazy value. The risk justifies the reward justifies the risk in that spot. Now, Melvin Gordon, I'm not as optimistic on. You know, there's a little bit of a different scenario with Gordon because he is a older running back. This is his age 26 season, and let's not forget, last year we saw a running back in his age 26 season hold out and then sit out the entire year. Now, it's a different scenario with Gordon than, of course, what we had with Le'Veon Bell last year, but it's still something that we need to be concerned with for sure, and there is some chatter that this holdout could last into the season, so I'm nowhere near as optimistic. If Gordon was good to go and in camp, I'd have him as a late first-round pick in 12-team leagues. At this point, though, I am not willing to take Melvin Gordon until the middle of the fourth round. If we get into that phase, say I'm up, it's pick 4-7, Gordon's on the board, bang, I'm taking him, because what I did earlier is I was conservative with my picks. In home leagues, you may have noticed this. In your home leagues, the people who used to not be prepared and really stink up the joint on draft day, they're a little bit better in the early rounds than they used to be. That's because they're printing out rankings, and the fantasy rankings in the fantasy industry right now these days are a lot better than they used to be as well. So they're going to draft well for the first couple rounds. It makes more sense to be conservative there than to be aggressive. So your conservative, safer picks with your first three, swing for the fences on that fourth pick. Melvin Gordon certainly swinging for the fences, because if he gets on the field or if he gets traded, you're in a really good situation. A.J. Green is on the wrong side of 30. And in two of the last three seasons, this is a guy, by the way, who earlier in his career was super durable, but in two of the last three seasons has missed sizable chunks of time. He actually had two injuries last year. Remember, there was a groin injury early last year before that toe injury cost him basically the second half of his season. So two injuries, then already injured as training camp opened up. Not a good sign for A.J. Green. That being said, A.J. Green in that offense could potentially be a guy who, you know, steps right in and is the clear number one target in what should look very different in that offense this year with Zach Taylor at head coach. So you look at him, if A.J. Green's around in the middle of the sixth round, you know, he would be probably your third or maybe even the fourth wide receiver you're drafting, depending on how your draft goes at that point. I don't mind taking a stab on him. You know, again, you know you're going to miss at least week one, probably week two, and maybe a little longer than that. So if you can just stash him away, especially if you have an IR spot, you could get a nice return on investment for a 6th-round pick. It's hard to find that sort of value that late. Even though he's north of 30, even though he's got the injury concerns, at that point, again, it's the reward justifies the risk. Antonio Brown, that risk at wide receiver, a little bit different. I fully expect his feet to be fine by the start of the season. The frostbite, yeah, it's a weird story, but it's not as concerning as A.J. Green. That being said, there are a number of red flags with Antonio Brown that, just make this a delicate situation for fantasy purposes. I don't want to be spending a 2nd-round pick because, again, safety in those early rounds, and I don't think Antonio Brown in the Oakland Raiders offense is a safe pick. So for me, middle of the 3rd round is where I'm now looking at Antonio Brown. If he's there, sure, I have safety in my first 2 picks. I'll, take a shot with Antonio Brown. He should see plenty of targets in that offense, and if he stays on the field, and does what he does, he's going to be productive. He's going to see volume and be productive, but there's just enough risk there that he's outside of the 3rd round. Now, Andrew Luck is a really interesting one, though, because there's been a lot of mystery surrounding this injury. We already had that once with Luck in 2017, though I do not expect him to miss the entire season or anything like that. Famous last words, right? I don't expect that, though. I expect him to possibly miss some time into the season, but that's about it. That being said, before the injury news, I had Luck as my number 3 quarterback. I thought he had a viable shot to actually outcompete Patrick Mahomes this season for fantasy purposes. While I'm not anywhere as optimistic as I once was, I moved him all the way down to 10. So that means at number 10 among quarterbacks, the earliest I'm willing to take Andrew Luck is in the 9th round. That's in home leagues as well. The earliest I'm willing to take him is in the 9th round. That being said, if you take a shot at him in the 9th or 10th round, I would definitely circle back around and get yourself a safe option, especially because you might need one in week 1. So get yourself Phillip Rivers, get yourself Kirk Cousins, get yourself Tom Brady, a nice safe option. They aren't going to lose you any games. And then if you get Andrew Luck fully healthy on the field, he could win you some games right there. You want to see where these guys land in our rankings and more on fantasy football draft strategy, you can check all of that out at pff.com.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel, and if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.